Are you looking for a way to scale your short-term rental business and buy more properties? Well, co-hosting might be the right fit for you. Welcome to the Co-Host Coach podcast with Joe Roney. This episode of the Co-Host Coach is brought to you by Savvy STR Agents. If you're looking to buy a short-term rental, then contact the STR Savvy Agent team at savvy.realty.
Welcome to today's episode of the Co-Host Coach, the podcast dedicated to helping you be the best co-host you can be. I am your host, Joe Roney, and today we are going to talk about how to choose the right market and the right property for you to co-host. I just got a phone call the other day on somebody that was interested in joining our mastermind, and they wanted to get into co-hosting, and they owned and operated their own short-term rental. And they were very, very successful with their short-term rental, so they thought co-hosting seemed like the next logical option to grow their portfolio and get an additional funds to be able to get into to buy more properties. All of that exactly where you want to be. That's why we get into co-hosting. At least that's why many get into co-hosting. However, this person had no idea where they wanted to co-host. They lived on one side of the country, and they were talking to me about markets they've never even been to before, much less, understand the market. And it got me really thinking, and I wanted to talk about that today, about where should you actually co-host and what kind of properties should you co-host. There are some co-hosts out there that have properties all over the nation, and they probably have 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 different markets of properties, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, when you're getting started, the best thing to do is to get started in your backyard. And that's where you're already hosting or where you already have a property. For me, it was Panama City Beach. That's where we owned our property. That's where I wanted to co-host, and that's where I decided to grow my business. I did that for multiple reasons. I already have boots on the ground. I've already got a good cleaning team. I already have my contacts for, the maintenance guy and the handyman repairman for the HVAC and our plumber and electrician and all those different things. I've already got all those resources. If I decided to go co-host in a market I've never been to before, now I have to go into that market, learn the market, find all of my boots on the ground, and then jump into co-hosting. So when we talk about the market that you should co-host in, start with the market that you know. You've already got the know about of everything going on. You already know about those local events. You know about the seasonality. Why not do it in your own backyard? Now, some might say the properties where my backyard is don't do a lot of revenue, and I want to go into a market that has a much higher revenue. I understand that completely, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, to get your foot in the door for your first co-host property, if you can get one near or in the same town that you're already operating a short-term rental in, then you're going to be more successful. Definitely on getting someone to say yes. The other thing you want to choose is a market that's easily accessible for you. And the reason why I say that is, especially in the beginning, if you're having to go to this property to do updates, if you're having to go to this property to, make it your own, or even further on, we do quarterly walkthroughs on all of our properties. If you have to get there 4 times a year, you don't want it to be in a market that you're spending $1,000 flight just to get there and back. And there are some markets that are like that. You're spending a minimum $1,000 round trip on a flight, and it might be too far for you to drive. So if you can drive it, great. If it's got a direct flight that's inexpensive, that's fine too. If you can get there and back in a few $100, $300 to $500, then you're not spending thousands of dollars on travel, and you can actually manage it a little bit more effectively. And if you were to get that emergency situation that you had to drop what you were doing and be at a property, you could do that. And that happened to me earlier this year. I actually had a property that was hit or clipped by a tornado on a Tuesday, and I was able to contact the owner. They were unavailable to get there to take care of the damages. Yes, I had boots on the ground. I had a handyman, but I dropped what I was doing. I got in the car. I drove to the property. I was there the next morning and was able to handle all of the issues from the tornado before the next guest checked in. thankfully it came through on a day that we didn't have a guest. The other thing you want to look at is an area that has growth opportunities, right? There are a lot of short-term rental markets, I think close to 13,000 different short-term rental markets in the United States, but there are some markets that are growing and getting more and have development and have a lot of properties. And then there's some markets that are a little bit smaller, especially in your smaller suburban or even some of those urban type markets that maybe, don't have as many for you to actually go in and co-host for, or maybe they can't hit the kind of revenue numbers that you want to be. So, when you're expanding out and you're going into a market and you choose a market that has some growth, again, hopefully you're already there, but if you're not and you're going into a new market, you definitely want to choose one that has growth potential and a lot of properties so you have a more variety of properties that you want to co-host. I also like to target higher performing properties. Now, I will say my very first property was not that $100,000+ a year property. Very rarely is that going to happen for you to land your first property to be at that type of revenue. It's building and it's baby steps. You're going to start at a certain point, and then you're going to learn and grow and actually get to another level to where you can get to those higher level properties. But when you're choosing your market in the beginning, you want to choose a market that has those types of properties. If the market you're in, max revenue per house is going to be $30,000 to $40,000, it's going to be you're going to need a lot of properties to build a six-figure co-hosting business with properties that you're only making $6,000 to $8,000, maybe $9,000 a year on. So having a market that you can actually see properties that are doing $100,000, $200,000, up to even $400,000 or more in revenue, that's the type of market that I want to co-host in, because that's the type of market that I can see our business continuing to grow and develop. Now that we've talked about choosing what market you want to be in, now you got to think about what kind of house you want to co-host. And again, your very first property may not be that beachfront home, 6-bedroom, 6-bath with a pool. It likely won't be. It's probably going to be tier 2, tier 3 from the beach. In the mountains, it might be that 2-bedroom. However, you still want to try to target properties that give you something to actually market. And location is one of those things that you can't change. You can't update your property to be a six-figure property when it's only doing $50,000 without changing the location. Yes, you can increase amenities and you can increase decor like we talked about on the second podcast. You can't change the location. So when you're identifying properties that you want to co-host, especially as you're starting to bring on more higher quality properties, you want to look for those properties that have views. You want to look for those properties that are close proximity to the events that you're going to market, whether it be close to the downtown strip, close to the beach, close to, having those mountain views, having a ski in, ski out, area. All these things are going to make a big difference on how well you book, not just during the peak season, but how you're going to book during the shoulder and the slow season. And everybody knows that during the shoulder season and the slow season is where you can take a property from being an average property to being a super property, is by beating the competition during those seasons. And that's how you're going to see those higher revenue numbers and help these owners make more money. So to do that, location becomes very, very critical in order to be able to market that and get to the type of property that you want. Now, nearby attractions is a big part, a big selling point, and it's how you're going to market. If you're in, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, and you're, 10 miles away from the strip, that property, even though it has amazing views, is not going to do as well as a property that's 1 to 2 miles from the strip that also has those same views. So you want to make sure you're looking at, where you are as far as proximity to everything. And then you want to start looking at, what type of hyperlocal events are in these markets that you can use to market and to get your house booked. For instance, in Panama City Beach, we have 2 huge motorcycle rallies. So having a property that has covered parking is a big amenity, because that's what a lot of these riders are looking for those specific weeks. So in a time that there's 75-80% occupancy during kind of a shoulder season, the properties that have those covered parking areas are going to perform better than the ones that don't. So understanding your market completely and knowing how to market the area that you're in is going to help you get your property more booked, which is the reason why you want to choose properties like that. All right, we're going to talk about that nasty word, saturation, that we all hear all the time in the short-term rental world. And like I said before, there are a few markets that are actually just really saturated. Kissimmee, Disney is one of those that comes to mind. You cannot bedroom count your way out of saturation because there is, just tens of thousands of properties no matter what the bedroom count is. However, when you're choosing a property to co-host, it's also important to understand saturation by bedroom count and what type of properties are going to help you be more successful. And there are data tools out there with STR Insights and AirDNA and a few others that you can look at. Some of it, STR Insights is definitely my favorite when it comes to looking at the bedroom count on what type of revenue a property can make. So you can look at that and see how many, in any of these data resources, how many 2 bedrooms there are in the area, how many 3 bedrooms, how many 4, how many 5, and so on. And you can look at that and say, okay, if I only have, 2,000 2 bedrooms, 1,000 3 bedrooms, and there's only 54 bedrooms, those 54 bedrooms are probably performing at a pretty high level because there's not as much of a supply and it's not as saturated, which means you're going to get booked more and keep it full throughout the entire season. So saturation is a thing that happens, but typically it's down to the bedroom count when it comes to saturation, not necessarily to the market. And when you're targeting properties that you want to co-host, knowing what type of bedroom counts you want to co-host makes a big difference, which leads me right into understanding the avatar for that market. Is it families coming into that market? Is it couples? Whatever it may be. So when you're talking about what type of bedroom count, you also need to think about who's actually booking and renting your short-term rental so you can cater to that and make sure that you're staying full. Seasonal demand is one of those things that you really need to know and understand. I tell people all the time, when you're writing out a pro forma, a lot of people will say, oh, it'll do X amount of dollars for 12 months, and this is what the ADR will be for 12 months. You really need to narrow that down to, this is how much revenue we're going to do in February, and this is the ADR, and this is the revenue that we're going to do in July, and this is the ADR. You have to be able to understand your markets and what numbers you're going to be able to hit and understand the seasonality. Back to what we said at the beginning, if you're going into co-host a market you already know, then you're going to be more successful because you understand that seasonality already. I know in the beach market, middle May through the end of July is gangbusters. But my very, very first year into the short-term rental space in the beach market, I would have never guessed that August, got that slow, because in the South, they actually go back to school usually around the 1st of the August. Where I'm at in the Midwest, they're not going back to school till the end of August. So we still get booked, but the pricing strategies are very different the first 2 weeks of August than they are the last 2 weeks of July, because you have about a third less people coming into the market. So understanding your seasons in the market that you're going to co-host in is really, really important for you to understand, so you can put together some realistic expectations for the owners. When you're looking at September, we may have a property that does $35,000, $40,000 in July, but it may only do $5,000 in February. And there's a big, big difference in understanding your market and knowing what that seasonality looks like, which is really going to come up to what we talked about is pricing strategies. And when it comes to knowing your market, understanding those pricing strategies. And I can tell you in Price Labs, I think I have 10 or 11 different seasons set up in my dynamic pricing tool because it is so very different. Even from the week after Labor Day through the first week of October, that's a separate season, which is shoulder season, and then we get a fall break time frame, and we pick up really busy for a couple weeks, and then it gets back to slow. So you can't be priced the same if you're going to be running these properties at a high level throughout all of that time frame, because you're going to find yourself unbooked and have too many vacancies. So having that pricing, especially during the shoulder and the slow season, and understanding those pricing strategies is really, really important for you to understand as you're co-hosting for other people. I say it all the time when it comes to co-hosting. You are taking over a property that an owner has put in tens of thousands of their own dollars that is probably part of their retirement plan, and they just want to hire you to do a very good job. So you definitely want to understand not only the market, understand all of the aspects that we've talked about today, but you need to completely understand short-term rentals so you can make sure that you're performing at the very, very highest level and even better than some of those local or bigger property managers, which is what our goal is. Last thing we're talking about is marketing strategies during those specific seasons. For instance, in Branson, Missouri, once summer's over, we're changing out our pictures and putting in holiday decor because it is a major holiday destination from mid-October through the end of December. And we want to make sure that people start booking at higher rates and understanding what we're marketing to. Need to understand that, in the beach market, spring break is really big, and you got to modify your listings and make sure you're catering and marketing to the type of demographics that you want to come to your house. And that does change by the season. And one of the things that we even do on our larger properties, especially during some of the shoulder season, if they don't have big amenities like pools, is we'll actually create 2 listings. We'll keep the 4 or 5 bedroom listing, and then we might even add a 2-bedroom listing in there for the same property and lock off some doors just to help fill up some of those vacancies during the middle of the week and help our owners make more money. These are some of the tips and tricks that you can do, and this is not just for co-hosting. This is also for your own properties. But if you want to be a super co-host, these are the types of things that you want to be able to do. So I know there's a lot of information today. The biggest thing, just to recap, choose your market. Make sure you understand the market that you want to be in and become an expert in that market. And then once you get 2, 3, 4 properties, expand. Or if you want to go 1 property per market, that's fine too. Just understand the time that it's going to take for you to do each of those things if you want to become a super co-host. There you have it. Tons of strategies for you to choose your market on a place that you want to become a super co-host. Remember, the goal is to provide an exceptional value to the property owners, which in turn is going to make your business more successful. You want to make them more money, which is going to in turn help you make more money, and it's a win for everyone. It is truly a partnership when you're getting into the co-hosting space, and you want to be able to have that partnership with your owners. If you enjoyed this episode today, please subscribe. Please leave a 5-star review. If you want to learn more and talk a little bit more about co-hosting, visit my website, thecohostcoach.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.